Right. So, as I said, thank you very much for joining me. And this afternoon, I'm going to talk about the 7 keys to a winning team, how to create a team that effectively performs in the way that you want them to perform, that gives you their best, and which enables your business to thrive. Now, as we go through, please ask questions as we're going along. Don't save them up till the end because first of all, you might have forgotten what the question was, but also if it's a question that you've come up with, there may well be other people who are thinking the same thing. So please do unmute yourselves and ask away if you have any questions. Right. Before we get into talking about how to get your team working as effectively as possible, I want to talk about you, the business owner. And I want specifically to talk about your mental resilience. I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that being a business owner can be a very lonely position at times. You don't always know who to talk to. And if you are not on top of your game mentally, your business will suffer. And if you have a team of people, they will see that you are not necessarily on top form, and it will have an impact on them as well. So before you can manage your business well, you must manage yourselves. So anybody who's been to any of my previous presentations or who's worked with me in the past will be familiar with this concept that we call the point of power. And the point of power is the point at which you have a sufficiently powerful mental attitude to be able to do what you need to do. When you are below the point of power, we use this acronym BED to describe the sorts of attitudes and behaviors that you might experience. So blame, excuses, and denial. And when you're in that frame of mind, you are not going to be able to achieve very much. You certainly won't be able to achieve the big goals that you've set. You might not be able to do very much at all. However, when we are above the point of power, when we're in a positive frame of mind, we use the acronym OAR, O-A-R, because you are able to take ownership of the issues in your business. You will hold yourself accountable, and those around you, you will take responsibility. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is, as I said before, because when you are below the point of power, when you are experiencing those sorts of thoughts and attitudes, you are depriving yourself of the power to achieve the things that you want to achieve. You might not feel able to really do anything at all. Above the point of power, you have all the energy, the enthusiasm, the positive attitude required to get on with your goals, your tasks, and all the important things that you have to do to keep the business running. Now, we all spend time below the point of power. We all have days when we don't feel 100%, when we're not enthused or excited. The key thing and the most important thing to take out of this point I'm making is that you need to develop the ability to recognize what you are thinking and whether or not that is actually going to help you. Because if you're not in a positive state of mind, if you develop the ability to look in at your own thoughts and see, are they positive? Are they helping me or not? You can then do something about it, but you need to recognize that state of mind before you can then do something. And if you do feel like that, there are lots of things you can do to try and change your frame of mind to get you back into a positive state. Some of them might take a little bit of time, but that doesn't matter because while you're in that frame of mind, you're not going to achieve anything anyway. So it's better that you take some time out and maybe take exercise. We all know if we take exercise, we feel better. We get all these chemicals rushing around the body, endorphins and things, and it is impossible to go for exercise and not feel better at the end of it. And far better to do that than to spend 2 hours sitting at your desk stewing and not really getting on with stuff. Another thing to do is to just set yourself, just achieve some small goals. You might have some very minor tasks that need doing. They might be very administrative, not require a lot of intellectual capacity. But every time you achieve a goal, your brain again rewards you. I think it's serotonin. Um, and so if you can just do something small, achieve a little task, tick it off your list, your brain will reward you. You'll then feel capable of doing something else that's slightly more demanding. And so you can build yourself back up into a state of mind where you can tackle anything that you need to do. So remember, be aware of your own state of mind, because if you are not above the point of power, it will have an impact on your business, your team, and your family relationships as well. So be aware of it. And I'm just going to talk also very briefly about the comfort zone. Who knows what the comfort zone is? Would anyone care to tell me? Unmute yourself if you'd like to. Or not. Anyway, the comfort zone. It's where we spend probably about 50, 60% of our time. And it's called the comfort zone because it's where we're comfortable. And the reason that we're comfortable in our comfort zone is because we are doing things that we are already familiar with. We are doing things that don't require a lot of thought or effort because we've done them already. We know how to do them. It's rather like getting in your car and driving to the local supermarket or somewhere else that you go to regularly. You can get in your car, you can sit behind the steering wheel, and you can arrive at your destination. And there are days when you arrive there and you cannot even remember the journey that took you there because you were on autopilot. And we have evolved in such a way to do things on autopilot where we can, because it then requires less effort, less energy, and going back many, many thousands of years, less likelihood of us being killed or eaten or whatever it might be. But the problem with the comfort zone is that you cannot grow. You as an individual and your business cannot grow without new knowledge, without new learning. If you do not learn, how can you do something new? You can't, because you don't know what it is or how to do it. So you can probably think of people who spend a lot of their time in the comfort zone. They're actually frightened to get out of it, and I'm going to explain why that is in a moment. You might go and attend a seminar. You may, at the end of this seminar today, fall back into your comfort zone and carry on doing the things that you're doing at the moment. I hope not, and I am going to ask you all what actions you're going to take at the end of this seminar in order to improve your team's performance. We have different size comfort zones. Some people, and if you think about someone like Sir Ranulph Fiennes, who's been to both poles, explored virtually everywhere under the sun, and even chopped his own fingers off with a hacksaw, his comfort zone is massive. There's very little that he isn't comfortable doing. Some people, though, have very small comfort zones, and your comfort zone gets bigger by doing stuff that wasn't previously in it. So you can increase the size of your comfort zone through learning. Another great way is to spend time with other people who are outside your comfort zone. It is a fact of life that you become the average of the 5 or 10 people that you spend the majority of your time with. And I do not wish to denigrate any of your friends or colleagues, but seriously, if you have friends or colleagues that you spend the majority of your time with who are not ambitious, who don't want to learn, who are happy being inside their comfort zone, you need to find some new friends, because they will not push you. In fact, you will find yourself having to pull them along with you. Practice getting out of your comfort zone. Practice being uncomfortable. And as I said, it's fear that stops us from expanding our comfort zone. And that's because when you leave your comfort zone, there are 3 other zones that you can move into. And the first zone that you come to is the fear zone, because you're about to do something you've never done before, something you're not familiar with, which by definition is not in your comfort zone. And so you might not be very confident of your own abilities. You might be already lining up the excuses as to why it was that you couldn't do it. You might be affected by other people's opinions who are saying, oh, well, I don't think Justin can do that. But just be aware the fear zone is there, and you just have to push on through, because once you've overcome the fear zone, once you've started to do this thing that you've set yourself, this new challenge, this new problem, you have learnt. You've acquired a new skill. You can now do something that you couldn't do previously. It is now inside your comfort zone. And now that you've acquired that skill, you can push on into the growth zone, which is where stuff happens. That's where your dreams come true. You can set big goals. You can do things you've never done before. So remember, two things. Be aware of your thoughts. And if your thoughts are not helping you, you need to change them. And secondly, you've got to continually, if you want to grow your business, you've got to continually be pushing your comfort zone, stepping out of it, learning new skills, because the only way you can expand your business is by doing things differently. If it would just grow because you carry on doing the same things, it would be growing fantastically already, but the chances are it won't be. You've got to go out and steal somebody else's lunch in the current climate because the economy is flat. So you've got to do stuff you haven't done before. So practice being uncomfortable. There's a lovely quote there at the bottom from this American business guru called T. Harv Eker. No one ever died of discomfort, yet living in the name of comfort has killed more ideas, more opportunities, more actions, and more growth than everything else combined. Comfort kills. So we've talked about mindset. Let's move on now to how you create a winning team. And I'm going to talk about these 7 principles. These are the 7 keys to a winning team. The first one is about leadership. It's about the strategies of management, the style of leadership you need for the different people in your business. The second is having a common goal. Having a goal that everybody in your team knows, understands, believes in, and will push for. And if everybody is pushing behind this common goal, if it's achieved, the whole team wins. Rules of the game. This is all about your company culture, about how people work together, how they communicate. Then there's the action plan. If you're a client of mine, you'll already be using our 90-day planning system. But this is about developing a plan that involves the entire team. The supporting risk-taking, involvement and inclusion, and then the last point is about continuous professional development, or indeed personal development. But let's go through each of these one at a time and explain a little bit more about what I mean. So, before we get on to leadership, communication. The most important thing in any business, in any relationship, is communication. And it is almost impossible to communicate too much or too often to your own team. Every time you think, oh, well, I don't need to talk to them, do it. It's really hard to communicate too often. You just increase the involvement. Whether you're talking about the goals, your rules, your vision, your mission, training that's coming up, appraisals, your business, your clients, talk and share. And so my first question to you all is, what do you need to do differently to improve your communications with your team? I'm going to give you 15 seconds now to write down what it is that you are going to do differently to improve either the frequency or the quality of communication with your team. Okay, and a great point there from Pedro in the chat. He's written practice active listening. A great point. I talked about communication. Too often we think that communication is about us talking to or sometimes talking at other people. Listening is probably even more important, and active listening. So people can see that you've actually heard them and you've registered what they've had to say to you. And as we go through this presentation, I'm going to ask you to keep taking notes, keep thinking about what it is you're going to do differently after today, because when we get to the end, I'm going to ask you to tell me what it is you are going to do differently. So, leadership. Your team need to be led. It's a bit like having a junction without traffic lights. That's fine if there's not much going on, if it's a small country road. But if you've got a busy business with lots of people, lots of things happening, you need direction. Now, the important thing is to understand that leadership is not about being a dictator or about being a tyrant. The distinction between leadership and management, which we're going to talk about in a moment, is the distinction between inspiration and management, project management almost. So you can be any style of leader that you want to be. But the point is, it's about creating passion in your team. It's about getting them to want to come with you on your journey with the business. So leadership is about creating that passion. It's about inspiring. It's about communicating, congratulating, bringing the right people on board. That is all around leadership. Management is about making your team competent, productive. It's about clarity in terms of what people are doing, measuring what's happening in your business so you can see when you're working well or not. It's about having the right systems. It's about having the right training. That is management. But leadership is about inspiration. And anybody can inspire, anybody can lead. They don't have to be big and shouty. You can be small and quiet. If you have a passion and you can communicate it, then you can lead. So, and people love following good leaders. It's inherent in our nature. We like to follow good leaders because we want to be part of something that's successful. So that's about leadership. The second area is then the common goal. How can your team help you achieve your objectives if they don't know what the goal is? So you need to share the common goal for the organization. They need to know what the goal for the business is. If they don't understand it, they can't make their own decisions. So you will end up with people continuously coming back to you, asking you what they should be doing next, because if they don't know where they're trying to get to, they can't make their own decisions. So make sure that you have a common goal that everybody understands. That common goal starts with the owner's vision. And we need a mission statement and the goals and how these are going to be achieved start to create the culture, but they point everybody in the right direction. There was a German military tactic during the Second World War, which was called Aufklärungstaktik. And it was about having knowledge of the ultimate goal. And if we want to make it a little bit more up to date, it's a little bit like the difference between the Ukrainian army and the Russian army in the current war. The Ukrainian army are taught along NATO lines where everybody knows what the common objective is, right the way down to the lowest soldier in the battalion or the squadron or whatever it might happen to be. In the Russian army, only the leader knows what's going on. Everybody else is expected to follow. So when the leader can't communicate, or if the leader isn't there, everything falls to pieces. So understanding where you're trying to get to allows the team to make their own independent decisions. There was a great example of this in the Second World War in a battle in the reconquest of Italy, where a particular armored reconnaissance regiment were given a task to go and do something. One troop in that regiment found a bridge over a river that was intact, that hadn't been destroyed. And because they knew what the division's ultimate goal was, the troop leader was able to say, actually, do you know what? I am not going to continue on the task that I've been given. I'm going to stay here and guard this bridge until it can be secured because I know it will be integral to achieving our ultimate goal. So share your goals. Let people know what they are. You don't have to tell them everything. Or they know enough that they know what the journey is and they know what the ultimate destination is, because they will come up then with ideas on their own for how to help the business arrive at that particular destination. So think about also what the goal is. That it must be inspiring and engaging. So how you set out your goals, the way you describe them is as important as originally agreeing what the goals are, because your team want to help you, but they will want to help you more if they feel that that goal is a worthwhile goal. Worthwhile either because it's a good use of their activity and their effort, worthwhile because they can see how it's going to help people, worthwhile because it's going to help them to develop as other people, as members of the team and grow themselves. The third area is rules of the game. This is really about your company culture. Ideally, you should have a set of values within your business that are written down and which everybody in the team can see. These rules will form part of your everyday language within the business. And if I can use an analogy, it's a bit like playing a game of rugby or football. You've got a ball, you've got a group of people. If you don't tell them that the objective is to put the ball in the back of the net or to cross the try line, if you don't tell them they're not allowed to step outside the white lines that go around it, if you don't tell them about the offside rule and whether you can pass forwards or backwards or where you have to be, they can't play the game. They're always going to be coming to you with questions. So make sure they understand the rules of the game, because then they can start to take the initiative. And they also won't make silly mistakes because they'll know that they're not supposed to do that. So how do you define your company culture? Well, think about the mission, the vision, and the values of the organization. And if you have a team of people, you must make time to do this. It's really important. You might think you've survived for this long without having these things in your organization, but you need to have them, because as the business gets bigger, and in particular, if you want your team to do more work for you, they need to know how to do it and how to do it properly. Otherwise, you'll be continually correcting them or having to clear up their mistakes. So you need to have a vision. This is about the strategic intent of the business. This is about what ultimately the business is trying to do. The mission describes how you do it. It's a description of your ideal organization, the way in which you work. And then finally, we look at the values. But if you have got a mission, a vision, and a set of values, you can literally jumpstart your business. So let's think about company values. Most businesses, whether they have a formally recognized set of company values, still have values. If you haven't formally written down what they are, then you have what we call accidental values. These are the values that exist in the business, and they will be a reflection probably of the way in which the business owner, the founder of the business, likes to work. And it's the culture that that individual will have created by dint of their personal attitude, their personal values, and their ways of working. Now, very often that's fine and that's actually adequate, but really you need to actually write them down. And if you're going to write your values down, you need to involve your team. The key issue here is you cannot impose a set of values onto people. Your values will be far more effective in terms of the way in which the team use them and adhere to them if they feel a degree of ownership in the creation of those values. So if you want to have values in your team, and you should have them, They're absolutely critical. You need to have a session with your staff where you develop what those values are. And if you want some details on how to hold a workshop in order to create a vision, mission, and a culture for your business, then I can send you information on that after this. So, but you need to follow a process. You need to identify what are the beliefs and the values that already exist in the business, i.e. those accidental ones. What are the beliefs and values that you want to have in the business that perhaps aren't being articulated at present that complement the business? But there's a process to go through, and provided everybody has been involved in this, they will have ownership of those values once you've decided what they are. And it will make it much easier for them to adhere to those values and to live them in their everyday sort of work. So as I said, involve your team in the process, define your values, make them come to life. Once you've identified what your values are, you might have 6 or 7 words that you've picked out: teamwork, excellence, whatever it is. You then need a short paragraph that describes what that actually means in practice so that people can relate to it and they can see an example of what good practice is in terms of that particular value. It's also important because you're going to include them in, for example, your appraisal system. So when you conduct reviews, once you've agreed on your values, you appraise people against the way in which they live up to the values that you have for the business. So you have to use them. You have to get everyone in the business to use them. Have physical reminders of them. I'm sure you've all been, or maybe not everybody has been, to sort of agencies where their values are all over the walls and they tell you exactly what they mean. So have something physical so people see a reminder every day when they're at work. And not only that, but your clients, when they come to visit you, your customers, can see them as well. Because people like to do business with organizations or businesses that have values that they can relate to. So once you've got your values, build them into your day-to-day language. Make them part of your recruitment policy. So when you're recruiting people, you don't just send out a job description, you include a set of the company values. And then you're more likely to attract people who fit with those values, who want to work in an organization where those values are present. As I said before, build them into your appraisals, into one-to-ones, team meetings, all sorts of different scenarios. And then a final point on values and rules of the game. Think about your environment. So this is the physical environment of your office, as well as the sort of slightly more esoteric cultural environment. Is it supporting your culture? What does your current environment say about your business? I have some clients who provide an amazing service to their clients and customers, but actually, if you went to their office, you would think, my God, this is a mess. That's not the impression that they want to portray, and clearly, if the office is a mess, there's a good chance that sort of slightly lackadaisical approach might rub off onto the team. You might develop an accidental value. So think about the environment of your workplace. What do you want to change that will make it closer to the values, the vision, and the mission that you want to have for your business? The fourth point is the action plan. So every business needs to have an action plan. With my clients, we work on 3 time scales of planning. We work on long-term goals, which are very broad brush, which is about where do you want the business to get to in 5 years' time, or what does it look like when it's finished? Or if you're thinking about an exit strategy, what does it need to look like in order to maximize its value at the point of sale? But we have a long-term goal, and that goal has to align with what you personally want, because there's no point in creating a business or a goal for the business, if having achieved that goal, it doesn't enable you, the owner, to do what you actually want to do yourself, to give your family the things you want them to have. So long-term planning, which is about the direction of travel. Where do we want to get to? Then there's medium-term planning, which is about what needs to happen in the next 12 to 18 months to be on that journey to that destination. But at this point, we're just looking at milestones. We're looking at key milestones that indicate that we're on that journey, that we're in the right direction. And then the detailed action plan is a quarterly plan. Every quarter, my clients sit down together in a one-day workshop and they identify the 2 or 3 key goals they have for the business for the next 3 months, and they work out a detailed action plan to make sure that those goals are going to be achieved. But that's just for the business. You can then start to take that down to your members of staff. So in an ideal world, all of your team members should actually have a plan. This can be a set of objectives that might be set during their appraisal, but they should have a plan for themselves in terms of what they're going to do, how they're going to improve, whatever you think is appropriate. So the key thing about action plans is you need to develop, first of all, the goal you want to achieve, the result you want, and then the actions and the tasks that need to be taken in order to achieve that end goal, that end result. If you have these action plans in the business and people are following them, they will achieve their results. So the 5th point is about risk-taking. So you don't want to encourage too many Nicholas Leesons in your company that are going to bankrupt you, but you do need to allow people to take risks in proportion to their role. Because if you don't, then you will create a risk-averse culture where people are frightened to do things in case somebody picks them up on it. And you will end up with unspectacular progress. You will be seen as being sort of, dull but worthy. And in particular, if you've got ambitious staff, people who genuinely want to make progress, there's a good chance that they might leave you. So allowing people to take risks within the rules of the game that you've defined creates innovation. Staff will be invigorated and stimulated because you trust them and you're allowing them to do things. And they'll give you their best. And people much prefer to work with a happy, vibrant company rather than one which is sort of slow, unspectacular, and dull. Because they are afraid that if you have that attitude will rub off on them. So encourage risk-taking within the rules of the game. Because remember, there are only 2 reasons why you should employ people in your business. The first is to do things that you can't do. So they might have a special skill that you don't have, so they can do something for you. And the second reason is to give them the things to do that you don't want to do, delegation. That's the only reason you employ people. And if you're going to delegate to them, if you're going to get them to do things that you can't do, you need to encourage this innovative and vibrant culture, which will encourage them to do these things. The 6th point is about involvement. Everybody in the business needs to feel involved. And if you're doing the things we've already talked about, then you're probably 90% of the way there already. Because if people feel involved, if they feel included, then they are going to be engaged and they're going to be committed to your business. They're going to want to work there because they feel part of it. We all have an innate desire to belong to groups of people. Again, this is something that has arrived as a consequence of evolution. And so the best way to keep people engaged and involved is to include them in what you're doing. If you don't include people, if you keep them in the dark, if they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, if they're not encouraged, if you're not holding regular team meetings explaining what the goals are and progress towards the goals, then there's a danger that they will become unengaged. They might even actively start to sabotage the organization, sometimes deliberately, other times simply because of their lack of engagement, and their desire not to be involved in work. So look for ways in which you can keep people involved and included. And going back to Pedro's point earlier, listen to what they have to say. You need to ask them for their opinions and listen to what they have to say. Keep them involved, because they will then feel included and part of the team, and they will want to do their best. And then the last point is about ongoing training. So every member of your staff, no matter what their role, no matter how superficially basic their role is, you need to have a training plan for them, a development plan. And this should be part of the review process and form part of the goals that you set them every time you have a review with them. Because if you have a development plan, that helps with the inclusion and the involvement. They feel that they're being looked after, that you have their best interests at heart. And even in a fairly sort of mundane role, where perhaps there's not a lot of training that they can have in terms of the skills that they need, you might want to develop them in terms of interpersonal skills, in terms of their ability to interact with your customers and clients, or with the other members of the team. There's always something that you can get them to do to develop their skills, to make them better, either as a person or in terms of their specific skills in the work environment. So keep going with the training, because they will become more useful to you more quickly if they're being trained on a regular basis. They will become more productive. And at the end of the day, as I said, you employ people to take work away from you. They will then be able to take work away from you. So ongoing training is key. The action coach definition of a real business is a commercial, profitable business that works without you. And your team, as we talked about stepping outside of your comfort zone, your team similarly need to be continually learning in order that they can step out of their comfort zones and they can take on tasks that perhaps they weren't able to do previously, but which they can be trained to do, and which then takes work away from you or from other managers in the business. Right, we've covered a lot of stuff in the last 40 minutes. So just a bit of a summary. If you're going to get your team mobilized, you need a vision. The team need to know where we're going. You need a mission statement which describes how we get there. How do we operate? What is it that we do? And remember, when you write a vision for your business, the vision doesn't really change. You might change your mission statement because you come up with new products and services or a different way of working, but the vision of where you want to get to should remain the same. If it's continually changing, it's not really the vision. You need a culture. And this is about creating a set of values that everybody buys into, that is used continually in the business, so that people start to absorb it. And it's about how they behave. And that sets the rules for the game, which then enables people to start to use their initiative. It enables them to go and do things without having to ask you all the time what you want them to do next, because they know already what you're trying to achieve, and they can work out for themselves what they should be doing next. You need to have goals. They need to be shared, and people need to be able to see that we're making progress. So we talked about communication and inclusion. Set out the milestones. You might say to them, right, well, our goal this year is actually to grow the company turnover by 50%. This is the plan, and these are the milestones. So by the end of Q2, we need to be turning over this much. By the end of Q3, we need to be turning over that much. we need to have acquired this number of new clients, or whatever it might happen to be. Give them the goals and the milestones, because then they can see how the business is performing, and again, they can help you to achieve the ultimate goal. Think about the organization in the business. Have you got a simple structure, a chart describing the structure of the business, which shows everybody what their role is, where their place is in the organization, who their line managers are, who other people's line managers are, etc. Because again, it makes life much easier if people know what they're doing. They need to have clear roles and responsibilities. They need to have job descriptions, but not just job descriptions. We sometimes call these things positional contracts, which is basically a job description with outcomes written into it. So if you employ a salesman, yes, you will have the role, the responsibilities of that individual within the job description, but you can take it a step further and you can say, right, in order for you to be a successful salesman, you need to be contacting this number of businesses every month. You need to be speaking to this number of people. You need to set up this number of meetings, because we know that if you do all of these things, you are going to create new clients at the end of it, because we know what the conversion rate is throughout our pipeline. You build that into the job description, so the person now knows they're going to be measured on how many businesses they've telephoned, how many people they've spoken to, how many meetings they've set up, etc. Key performance indicators. We need to know what's going on in the business. We need to understand how well the business is performing. We can look at our P&L to understand, and our cash flow forecast to understand the financial performance. But how do we know how efficiently we're delivering our product and service? We might be doing it very inefficiently. We might be able to find a 10% improvement in our, or a 20% improvement in our profit margin simply by being cleverer about how we work. But we won't know that if we're not measuring the efficiency with which we deliver our products and service, or the efficiency with which individual members of the team are working. Excuse me, you need to have systems in place. Systems which enable people to work efficiently. So nobody's, so we don't have a team of craftsmen individually handcrafting from scratch every new project, but a way of working which they can follow, which we know will make things efficient and fast and reduce our overheads. And then finally, back to the very first point, communication. You cannot communicate too often, and you need communication that's obviously relevant about how things are going, how we're going to keep stuff on track, what's our performance, etc. So those areas in blue, that's about leadership, that's about the inspiration, that's about leading people forwards. The areas in grey are about the management of the business. These are the systems, the processes, the nitty-gritty that make sure that we work effectively. Right. I've said a lot in a relatively short period of time, and hopefully I haven't overwhelmed you all. So, a few questions for you. Think about your team. Who can you recognize and praise in the next week? I'd like you all to write this down. Who can you recognize and praise in the next week in your team? And once you've decided on that, decide when you're going to do it. Second question, what do you need to do to improve your communication, your management, or your leadership skills? Are there any things that you can immediately think about doing differently that are going to improve your communication skills or your management skills? And more generally, expanding on that previous question, what are you going to do differently? So I asked you to take notes as we were going through, and I asked you to think about things that you might decide you want to start doing, or things you might want to stop doing, or things that you might want to do differently. So start writing those down. And if anybody would care to share those, please do put them into the chat or take yourself off mute and let me know what it is that you're going to do differently or you're going to start doing.
May I give my comments on this?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I look to the actual context in the organizations, and I see the role of the leaders are more and more challenging because the context is to keep the normal business running, but then you had to add more new topics on your daily agenda, such as GDPR, cybersecurity, ESG, remote work, and risk. So when a leader has to deal with this on a daily basis, to transfer his experience and knowledge to the team is becoming more difficult. So I think it's very important for a leader to delegate more and more on the others and reduce the concentration on the daily tasks that absorb him or her, and defocus on the main priorities as a leader, to make sure that the team is working all together and working in the same direction to accomplish the same goals decided by the board or the shareholders, whatever. So to the questions that you raised, I would say that the recognition to the staff, I do it on a daily basis, as long there is a reason for that. So I don't wait for the annual appraisal to recognize that someone is doing the right job or do it in a proper way that satisfies the client. But in the same way I do it, recognizing that the job was really good, I do it in the other way, saying you should do it differently because there was a mistake or the client claim because of this or that. So it's a very transparent relationship with my colleagues. And one of the things that I want to do, because it is a topic that concerns me a little bit, is regarding the people that are more reluctant to change. You know, every day we are talking about new subjects that involves people, and technology is part of the solution. And some people are afraid of changing their comfort zone because they don't know if they are prepared for a new context. So this is my comments for now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Pedro. And Paul has put a point into the chat, which is about communication. Be clearer on what is expected of my employees. I can't presume that they know, which is a great point. Yeah, they may not know what you know. They may need to be told things which you might assume that they know, but yeah, assumption is the mother of all mistakes and disasters. So never assume. If there's any doubt, tell them, communicate with them. They may say, I know that already, but it's better that you assume they don't than presume that they do, and then consequently discover that they haven't done something the way that you want them to do it. Yeah, so communication is absolutely key. Any other points that anybody would like to share in terms of what you're going to do differently, things that you might be thinking about implementing in your business?
I think something for me is when you mentioned about being uncomfortable, and that's something that I'm not great at when it comes to my employees and sales and bits and pieces like that. But that's definitely something I need to become better at. It's I find it quite, even with the guys who I've had working with for a while, there's an issue. Possibly I might be too nice.
Yeah.
So maybe I definitely think being uncomfortable is definitely something I need to improve on.
Okay, good. Well, you've taken the first step there, Paul, which is to, as I said initially, about being conscious of what you're thinking. Similarly, be starting to be conscious of where you may or may not be perhaps as good as you could be, is the first step along improving and becoming better at it. So
yeah,
so that that's a positive start.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good. Any other thoughts that anyone would like to share? Okay. Right. I'm conscious I've taken up about 50 minutes of your afternoon. So I just want to say thank you again for coming. I hope very much that you have found it useful, that you've got a lot out of it. Either I or Francesca, my PA, will be in touch with you next week just to see if there's any material here that you'd like to have copies of, and to see if there's anything in particular that you might like to ask me questions about in more detail. However, that's next week. In the meantime, thank you for coming, and have a great weekend, since it looks as though it might not rain. Thank you very much.